Jackson with a breaking news special report. Donald Trump on trial, but we're learning he may not end up on the stand at all after an explosive day with a tough, but tough to follow at times, cross-examination of the prosecution's star witness. That's Michael Cohen, who prosecutors think can connect the dots between that $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels for her silence about an alleged affair, one that Mr. Trump denies, and today got personal with the former president's lead attorney, Todd Blanche, asking Cohen if he called Mr. Trump a crying little blank or that he called Mr. Trump a dictator D-bag. Cohen responding, it sounds like something he would say. Blanche has prepared for this cross for months, according to a source, and over, he seemed to be trying to get a rise out of Cohen, asking him point blank, do you want to see Mr. Trump convicted? Cohen said, sure. And while it got personal, some of what we heard during this cross-examination didn't seem to get yet to the meat of the case, the heart of the charges here. Cohen's allegation that he paid Stormy Daniels at Mr. Trump's direction so that her story would not affect Mr. Trump's chances of becoming president of the United States. Cohen also maybe trying to appeal to a jury that already heard a ton about how he's a liar, saying he does have regrets, that he, in his words, violated my moral compass and I suffered the penalty. Now, in just the last 20 minutes, we heard from the former president. Court has wrapped up for the day. He's walking outside. He didn't bring up Cohen, and apparently he may not speak at all in court. His lawyer saying he may call up one other expert when the defense takes its turn to make its case. But other than that, it's probably it. So what does that mean timeline-wise? It means Michael Cohen is probably the last major voice we're going to hear in this trial, because prosecutors also say they're going to wrap up after him. So look at the calendar. It means that this trial could finish up maybe, like, again, these are question marks here. We know there's no trial tomorrow. Maybe more Cohen testimony expected Thursday. That's what Todd Blanche said right at the end. You've got Barron Trump's graduation on Friday. No court that day. Could we see closing arguments next week? Maybe we'd see a verdict on these 34 felony counts before Memorial Day. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to take you inside all the rooms cameras couldn't be inside for every key element coming out of court, what it means, and importantly, why it matters, why Cohen is so central here. Our team of reporters and legal and political experts has you covered, ready to break it all down. I want to start with Vaughn Hilliard, and let's start with this cross, right, because it's sort of on pause for now. It's going to pick back up on Thursday. Big theme here totally seems to be going after Cohen's credibility again and again, right?
Right. It's not exactly disputing the actual documented evidence, the actual invoices or the checks that were signed by Donald Trump when he was in the White House, reimbursing Michael Cohen that $130,000. Instead, it's trying to sow doubt in the jury's minds about the credibility of Michael Cohen. But there was some wiggling and wavering around the questioning by Todd Blanche, the defense attorney for Donald Trump, Hallie, in which he was questioning him about whether he had leaked a story to the press. There were questions about whether he was turning on Donald Trump and cooperating with the district attorney's office just so he could potentially have a shorter prison sentence after he pled guilty in 2018 on federal charges, including some related to the underlying crimes alleged against Donald Trump. And so for the defense attorneys for Donald Trump, they were kind of asking him questions more about, like, how much money he made off the books and his TikTok in which he has slammed Donald Trump over the last couple of years. Again, trying to sow doubt in the minds of the jury about the actual motive and intent of Michael Cohen saying the things about Donald Trump that he's saying.
So, Vaughn, what's interesting here, and I want to go through some of the highlights for folks who were not, as you were, immersed in every bit and piece of it. You were in court, I know, for a bit. We're going to get to that. But at one point, Cohen was saying he lied about the Stormy Daniels payment to protect Mr. Trump, to stay on message, to demonstrate continued loyalty. Prosecutors seem to think that what he said was enough to make their case. Explain that.
Right. Using Michael Cohen, who is really the one providing the firsthand account of so much of these meetings, including 3 days before Inauguration Day, when he says he and the chief financial officer went into Donald Trump's office in New York and actually hashed out exactly how much money that he was going to get paid every month in those reimbursement checks and how they got to that point, the fact he was going to get a bonus. And every step of the way, they went back to why he continued to lie on behalf of Donald Trump. And just look at one of the exchanges between one of the prosecutors and Michael Cohen, in which Susan Hoffinger, the prosecutor, asked, did you continue to try to protect him? Again, we're talking about 2017, 2018, when he continued to, what he says, lie for Donald Trump. And he says, yes, ma'am. Did you continue to lie for him? Yes. Why'd you do that? Out of loyalty and in order to protect him. It was not until months after the story became public in early 2018 where Michael Cohen, you could say, flipped on Donald Trump. And the reason he continued to defend him, he said, was because of that sense of loyalty to him. Again, they worked together dating back to 2007. They had a long-standing relationship.
So, Vaughn, as we mentioned, you were in court there. I want to get your sense a little bit of what the news people call the color of it all, like what a normal person would call the vibe inside the room, and the Donald Trump of it all as well, because the former president initially said at the beginning of this trial, he said it before, he'd be interested in testifying. Sounds like his lawyers do not want him to, and that he is not going to.
Right. Donald Trump had suggested that, and I think the question ultimately comes down to whether Donald Trump thinks his own defense team has built up a credible case, on his behalf. Donald Trump usually believes that he is the smartest guy in the room. We knew that through his presidency. And the question here is whether he will be satisfied by the cross-examination that his defense attorneys put on here. And right now, that is questionable. I was in there in that courtroom when Michael Cohen, in a very solemn, regretful way, say that he regretted his actions, that he regretted being a bully at times for Donald Trump, and he was making eye contact with the jurors throughout his testimony. And this sounded like somebody who was almost like, it was like the day after he pled guilty and before he went to prison. He served more than a year in prison, again, for those underlying crimes that are alleged against Donald Trump. And, looking for Donald Trump here, he sat there about 80–90% of the time with his eyes closed. But he had allies like Speaker Mike Johnson who were there on his behalf. And so for Donald Trump, potentially his future, if he were not to win the election, he were to be found guilty and found to have to serve prison time, there is a lot on the line here. And it would be tough for Donald Trump, I think, in hindsight, to not take the stand in his defense, depending on how he thinks his own defense attorneys are doing on his behalf, Hallie.
Vaughn Hilliard, more to come, of course, in the days ahead, in the week ahead at least. Appreciate it. Let me bring in now somebody who knows Michael Cohen well. That's Lanny Davis, the former attorney and current legal advisor for Michael Cohen. Lanny, thank you for making your way here to the set.
Thank you.
As we talked about, you know Michael Cohen well. And what was interesting today was the way that the defense in the cross-examination was trying to portray Michael Cohen as a guy out for revenge, a guy obsessed. And they used that word, obsession. At one point, Blanche asked him, you were actually obsessed with President Trump, weren't you? And Cohen denied that he was, just that he admired him tremendously. Another time, Cohen said he was, quote, knee-deep into the cult of Donald Trump. You watched, I think in many ways, this relationship deteriorate over time. What do you make of this?
Well, I watched the moment of truth where he turned and decided to change and tell the truth. And I was skeptical that anyone would believe him. And it came because his family finally said enough and broke him 10 years of lying for Donald Trump. So when he testified in front of Congress, there was a prelude to what we're seeing, which is in front of partisan Republicans with a sign on the wall. You may remember, liar, liar, pants on fire, and no judge to protect him. He kept his cool. I actually sat behind him with a signal if I touch his back, he would lower his tone. And that's where he's going to be today. And I think the liar, liar, pants on fire is all I hear my fellow commentators criticizing him say. At some point, the jury knows that he lied for Donald Trump. How many times can the cross-examiner prove that? Now the question is, do they believe that he actually turned and expressed shame and remorse? And then do they see documents supporting him, making him more credible? And that's the key.
You did not have your hand on Michael Cohen's back today in court.
No.
You didn't do that yesterday. But the
that was our secret.
Yeah, exactly. There was no secret signal there. But the person I think that a lot of my colleagues in the industry saw was a little bit different from the Michael Cohen we've seen. He's somebody who can be sort of a big personality. He was not that way on the stand. We saw today Todd Blanche, it seemed, try to maybe get under his skin a little bit. Didn't get angry during the cross, at least not based on the notes that we're getting from our colleagues in court. Did that surprise you, or did you expect that given all the prep that Cohen has done?
First of all, they've set such a low bar by calling him a liar, 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 and he's going to blow up, and Todd Blanche has all these expectations that I think he'll succeed. But on the night of Mother's Day weekend, I have to confess, I excused myself from the dinner table to talk to him.
This weekend?
Yes.
What did you tell him?
Well, what he told me is, I know everybody expects me to blow it, and they're going to provoke me, but I'm going to remember what we did in front of Elijah Cummings, which was with Jim Jordan yelling, "You're a liar," and Mark Meadows and all the Republicans trying to provoke him. He wasn't provoked. So this is his second rodeo, maybe his third rodeo, because he was cross-examined during the Attorney General's trial. So I think he's going to exceed expectations and maybe even succeed.
Does he worry about what happens to him if Donald Trump is not convicted?
He's always worried about Trump's venom and attacking his wife on Twitter and his wife's father on Twitter. And his family feels the risk of Donald Trump's wrath. So, yes, he does worry about everything to do with Trump. But I think he's learned to live with that worry. Once he made the turn, it was at the end of June 2018 when I decided to go forward with him. And since then, he's kept his word to own his lies and accept and convince people he's ashamed, and use the word shame.
You talk about owning his lies. There are, just objectively speaking, a web of them, as you well know.
Correct.
Everything from, obviously, you know, we've talked about the testimony to Congress, Robert Mueller. I mean, the graphic is up here. What he talked about in his book called Revenge here. Do you believe, and I'm asking you to separate this a little bit, Michael Cohen, the friend, Michael Cohen,
right.
your client, former client, right? Do you believe that that is getting through to the jury at this point, based on what you've seen coming out of court over the last 48 hours?
So I'm not sure, because it's very difficult when you're constantly being badgered and called a liar for some jurors to doubt. But the idea, sitting with the prosecutors for almost 2 years, several times a week, you may have seen my tan coat coming out every day. My children made fun, "Dad, get a new coat." All they did was surround everything he said inside this little office we sat in with documents,
with the receipts,
with text messages, with literally timeline surrounding everything he says, corroborating what he says. That, to me, is what the jury will ultimately do. If they don't like Michael, they think he's a liar, they don't believe his contrition, they have a surrounded number of documents to bolster his credibility.
Two real quick ones for you before we let you go. What are you looking for Thursday? Will you breathe a sigh of relief when it's over?
I will breathe a sigh of relief for my own sake, because I can't keep the schedule up that I'm trying to present another side on this type of show. But for him, he really does need a relief in his own mind. And I know that his family has been communicating with me. All they want to do is put him in a cocoon and try to get him to get some mental peace, which right now he's suffering pretty much.
How about you? Were you surprised to hear your name come up in the cross today?
Well, my wife called and said, "Hey, they mentioned your name." And I said, "Well, that's not the first time. My friend Chuck Todd remembers me and Bill Clinton, and I certainly was hammered by the Republicans. But I did not go to the courtroom for exactly the reason that I thought they would point me out. And I decided I'd better be talking to people like you than in New York."
We're glad you are. Lanny Davis, thank you for being here
Hallie.
in Washington. Really appreciate it. Please come back. Much more to talk about, I know, in the days to come.
Thank you, Hallie.
Thanks. Let's get into this more with our NBC News legal analyst, Danny Savalos, and former Manhattan Assistant DA Catherine Christian. Danny, we'll have to start with you, our resident criminal defense attorney expert, so to speak. The defense team for the former president had a plan for Michael Cohen today, it seemed, to try to discredit him. In your view, did they do that? Do they still have a ways to go?
Well, you mentioned a plan, and when it comes to cross-examination, you can plan, but plans go awry pretty quickly if you start going down the wrong avenue. And I think maybe to some degree that might be what happened. There's just so much to cross-examine Michael Cohen about that you sort of have a hard time organizing how to begin. And I think that's what the defense struggled with. I think some of their questions weren't as tight as they could have been.
Well, so...
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because it did seem... like, I don't know if meandering is the right word for it, but it definitely seemed less tight, I think, than maybe Blanche has been in other instances. Is that a fair read?
No, that is a fair read. The one word, the guiding principle in cross-examination has to be control. You have to try and control the situation, because you don't have control over the witness. This is a witness who's looking to thwart you with every single question you ask. So when you think about that, you can't script things too rigidly, and you can't jump around. In fact, the wording of every question is critical. You have to be careful with questions like, is it fair to say blah, blah, blah? Is it fair to say? I mean, the witness like Michael Cohen is going to take that and throw it back at you. Yeah. It's really, really challenging. And so, so far, I think the cross has been a little meandering. I think Cohen has been difficult-ish, But he is answering questions, yes or no. Sometimes he's reluctant. Sometimes he refuses. He often answers with a qualification. I'm certain, yes. Sounds like it's right. Sounds right to me. That's not exactly answering the question, but close enough. He's not being as difficult as he could have been, and that's probably good for getting the jury to have faith in him.
The prosecution also, Catherine, really they knew what was coming. They knew what Todd Blanche and team were going to do. They tried to get ahead of it by bringing up these issues, how he's made money off his connections to Mr. Trump, how he asked for a reduced sentence. They brought up the many, many lies that he's told, if you will. Do you believe that they effectively took the wind out of the defense's sails, so to speak?
They took most of the win. And all the other witnesses, by the way, who testified, who did not have nice things to say about Michael Cohen, took the wind out. So when he took the stand today, the defense, you know, they did their cross and they haven't finished, but the jury already got a sense of who Michael Cohen is. And as Lanny Davis said, they don't have to like him. They don't have to believe he's finally found his moral compass, but they have to find him credible. And they can do that with all of the circumstantial evidence.
Well, that's what it is, right? The evidence, getting to the heart of the matter here, these 34 counts of falsifying business documents. Danny, do you think the defense is going to get into that on Thursday when they pick up this cross again, or is it going to be all about Michael Cohen, sort of the person, the personality, the character?
They have to. I mean, they have to touch the documents, but I mean, they're going to spend a lot of time just calling him a liar. And they, by the way, they run the risk there of overkill. I remind everyone of the Stormy Daniels cross, where they started focusing too much on, do you remember, you don't remember if you walked to the hotel or got a car. You don't remember if you had dinner or didn't have dinner, and you may have lied about having dinner. When you focus, and I'm guilty of this too, I've done this too. You start preparing a cross, you hyper-focus on every lie this person has ever told, every inconsistency. And what you do is, in hyper-focusing on that, you can lose the jury. And I wonder if by just going over and over and over again on all of Michael Cohen's moments of dishonesty, that might be a little overkill. It's just such a difficult line to walk.
Catherine, real quick on the redirect, what does the prosecution have to do, do you think? What would be their big goal?
Well, they have to rehabilitate Michael Cohen. Okay. For anything, like the defense, were, you know, you were not allowed to speak to Donald Trump or his family. Well, that was because this was an investigation, and everyone has a lawyer. So anything that was misleading in the questioning, Susan Hoffinger, the prosecutor, is going to redirect and bring that out. She may decide, depending on how the rest of the cross goes, not to redirect, because then it allows the other side to recross.
Catherine, can I ask you about another legal issue that'll end up leading into our next conversation in just a second, but that's the gag order, right? Because an appeals court upheld the gag order imposed here. He's already been violating it in the eyes of this judge, Judge Merchan, 10 times. One of our other NBC analysts, former federal prosecutor Joyce Vance, suggests that the gag order prevents him not just from making comments about, you know, jurors and witnesses, but that it also prevents other people from making comments. Mr. Trump has called some of these Republicans who have come up to the courthouse speaking on his behalf his surrogates. Do you believe that he runs the risk of violating the gag order if he did direct some of these allies to speak out against the people that Donald Trump is not allowed to speak out against?
Well, you said the magic word. If he directed them to do it, then he's in trouble. They're all going to say, no, he didn't direct me. I've been following the trial, and I know these are horrible people. So it's going to be very hard to prove that he directed these senators and other politicians from saying these things about witnesses.
Danny, is it just us, or is this trial progressing at blazing speed?
Oh, no, it's not just us. I think I've been saying this for days. I think this is the prosecution's strategy, because it really throws off the defense. The faster they get the witnesses up and down, the less time there is to prepare. And by the way, I'll give you a quick example. The defense said they may not even have their expert ready for their one witness until Monday. I mean, think of that. That is totally disorienting to the defense if the prosecution is finished that soon. But it may get stretched to Monday after all is said and done with the days off.
When do you think we're looking at closings? What, next week maybe, right? Early next week?
I do. I think we're looking at closings next week. I believe, and again, don't save the tape, I believe there will be 0.0 witnesses for the defense. I think they feel like they have a reasonable doubt case, and they're going to try and pound the podium on that one.
Catherine, do you agree?
I agree with Danny.
Oh, when Catherine
We're
agrees
saving the
with
tape.
me, I
We
feel...
are saving this tape, that's for sure. Catherine Christian, Danny Savalas, thank you very much. Let's get big picture here on the politics of it all and everything else with our reporters and analysts, now experts in this. New York Times investigative reporter Suzanne Craig in New York, Washington Post national editor Phil Rucker in D.C., and our very own chief political analyst Chuck Todd. The aforementioned Chuck Todd joining us here in Washington on set. Suzanne, I'll start with you first, only because you've been in the courtroom, I know, over the last few days for this Michael Cohen testimony. I just wonder, as somebody who has covered this, you know this well, what are your big takeaways? Like, what did you see that we didn't that we should know about?
Well, I was really bracing for this afternoon for this examination of Michael Cohen. We've been waiting for it, and it really just it didn't so far happen. I don't know what's going to happen on Thursday, but I found it very disjointed. And just as an example, the first question, Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's lawyer, gets up and he says, Michael Cohen, he says, you know, we've never met. And Michael Cohen says, no, we've not. And Todd Blanche says to him, but on TikTok, you called me a crying little, and then there's an expletive that I won't say. But instead of making it about Donald Trump, the first question's about Todd Blanche. And the rest of it sort of proceeded in a rather disjointed way. So I think that was kind of the big surprise was, I mean, Michael Cohen he held up on direct. I thought he did a good job. He was very even. Everybody's been worried he's going to be explosive. We didn't see it on direct, and we did not see it on cross so far.
Chuck, let me go to you on that, because to channel a famous SNL character, the hottest club in New York right now is a downtown Manhattan courtroom. And you have been seeing all these Republicans show up here, including the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, who was there, along with North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, possible VP candidate, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, Vivek Ramaswamy, who said he would back Trump today, even if he were found guilty, when one of our producers asked. Here's a little bit more of that from today.
It's election interference, and it's tying up the president from being out on the campaign trail.
This is a travesty of justice. This is a misuse of the justice system.
That is not justice. That is a bastardization of what this country was founded on.
Is this a roll call here?
Well, I'll tell you, this is exactly what many sober-minded Washington legal and political types were worried about when there was criticism of what Alvin Bragg was doing, when he chose to basically be the first. He wanted to be the first one to indict Trump, and he's successfully the first one to indict Trump.
This was called a zombie case.
That's right. His case is the first case to go to trial. And the fear that a lot of folks in Washington had, a lot of folks that really believe that Donald Trump needs to be held accountable for his actions in office, was that by essentially leading with the weakest case, not just the weakest case legally, the weakest case politically. Because the real problem I think they have with the court of public opinion here is the voters have already decided whether Trump's character was bad enough or not to be elected president. The Access Hollywood tape, we all heard it. Yeah. Everybody heard it. Essentially, this was all a derivative of that. But in many cases, it's the same thing that happened to the Republicans when they went after Bill Clinton, and they were going, I don't understand this. Why aren't people more outraged by what he did with Monica Lewinsky? I remember at one point in the '96 campaign, and this had to do with other scandals, Bob Dole was out there, where's the outrage? And the fact of the matter is, voters knew about the Bill Clinton character flaws before the election. They factored it in and elected him anyway. That's what happened here with Donald Trump, these personal character flaws. And I think a lot of this is why this is not penetrating beyond, really beyond anywhere in this courtroom, beyond those that already think that Trump is guilty of something and just find him guilty of something, you know, just throw him behind bars. Because now he has successfully politicized all of the legal cases against him. And I think it really does even dilute the potency of the January 6th case if it ever gets to trial.
Much less before November, which seems like certainly not an inevitability, far from it at this point. You know, it's interesting, Phil, I hear Chuck talk about, you know, the bygone days covering previous presidents, right? You and I were in it in 2016, 2017, 2018 on the campaign trail at the White House when Donald Trump, when these revelations were in many ways first starting to come out against the, at the time, then president and then candidate. And so much of what we heard today in the cross was interesting. It felt like we were in a 2017 flashback in so many ways. It was like a walk down memory lane.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, so many of these allegations about Trump, the details, the facts of this case have been known for some time. And Chuck's right on when he says voters have factored it in. Voters already know all about his infidelity, about his business dealings, about the weird, you know, personal relationships that he's had, about the character of his lawyer, Michael Cohen, who's been a main character through all of this for years now. And so I think this trial is, you know, regardless of what the verdict ends up being, may not necessarily shift public opinion. And what you're seeing from Trump and from his attorney, Todd Blanche, is they're really trying to politicize this as much as possible. It's why he has his vice presidential potential candidates literally trekking to New York and being in court and standing behind him in front of cameras to make this a political act, to make it a part of the campaign, and to really try to solidify the support that he has with his supporters in the country.
Suzanne, I wonder if you see that, too, as a show of force and how that played actually on the ground. We know that there are, you know, handfuls of supporters of the former president showing up outside court. It has become, I think, in some ways, an interesting spectacle for members of the public who can get in to see some of this for themselves. Talk us through that.
Right. I really felt that today. And I have to say, I was talking to Andrew Weissman, one of our legal analysts here, and he was saying it was very reminiscent of mob trials where family would come in and supporters would come in. They would sit behind the defendant and they would stare at the witness. And it felt like that today, and it felt like that yesterday. There's been a parade of people come in. But the other effective thing of having them come in is there's a gag order on Donald Trump. He is very limited in what he can say, but now he's got his surrogates going to the camera and talking and saying things about the judge, the judge's family, and witnesses that Donald Trump can't say. You talked about that in the previous segment, and I think that that's been effective for him because he's now got cameras on other people saying what he wants to say.
To that end, Phil, we've heard from Democrats, the DNC, really just one clapback, but called today's attendees, I'm quoting here, the saddest posse of MAGA loyalists in Lower Manhattan, saying the former president is, again, quoting, desperate for emotional support. Listen, obviously some trash talk on the part of the DNC against a rival campaign here. Do you get the sense, based on your reporting, based on the folks you're talking to, that there is a desire among some Dems to see a more muscular response from the Democratic campaign?
You know, maybe, Hallie, but it certainly seems like President Biden is looking to keep some distance from all of this. So, you know, certainly DNC operatives who do rapid response in a campaign context are following the twists and turns in the courtroom and trying to seize any opportunities that they have. But you're not seeing the president or the vice president talking in any sort of detail about this trial. They've not given any public indication that they're even paying much attention to it. I think they're looking to see, when we get out of this trial, what does the political landscape look like? How does Biden stand vis-a-vis Trump, and how do they carry on for these, you know, 5+ months between now and November?
I'm looking at you cocking your head.
I just think it's telling that, look, Rick Scott is a very risk-averse politician. People don't realize that about him. He was the first one to go up there and basically be the buddy cop movie with Trump the first time. He's up for re-election. He also would like to be the Senate Republican leader. He's a very calculated guy. He doesn't do anything on a whim. The fact that he saw this as an asset,
as an opportunity,
should tell you the plot's been lost politically on this trial for the left.
On some of the swing state polls we've talked about here, you know, Phil talked about the political landscape, what that looks like. We talked about this last night, right? The New York Times poll showing that the current president is trailing the former president. But there are also some polls from back in March that show if he ends up convicted in this particular case, he could lose some support. In an election like this, where the margins are going to matter, those very, very slim margins, how do you see it?
It could be, but I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical.
About any needle moving
on this trial. I think he has done. This is the effectiveness of making sure you bring supporters, showing that you have no fear of this, making it easier for your supporters to see this as nothing but a political stunt. And you got to remember, we live in a fragmented media environment. And while legacy media is covering this trial very thoroughly, digital media isn't. Not all digital media, certainly not even some of the cable news media that has an audience that's more right-leaning. So even if something is revelatory in this trial, I don't know if it's going to break through in some of the places that maybe Joe Biden would love to try to convince these folks to, but it's not going to penetrate those media silos. So I think that's another aspect of this that sort of makes it makes this hit, at best, very muted.
Chuck Todd, thank you. Phil Rucker, Suzanne Craig, we're so glad to have you all here on our special coverage of the Donald Trump trial in Manhattan. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for watching. We've got a lot of other big headlines tonight. We're going to catch you up on all of it when we pick up our regular programming right after the break.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.